Hi friends, my name is Katie and welcome back to my channel, The Full Bucket Vlogs. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to get a little deep and we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics of all time, consciousness. As some of you may know, I was a neuroscientist, and what I studied in undergrad was a combination of both neuroscience and women's studies. I'm currently in grad school at Wake Forest University, where I'm studying counseling and psychology. I wanted to talk to you guys today about one of my favorite subsets of phenomenology, but first I'm going to tell you what phenomenology is in a very little brief nutshell way. Phenomenology, some people think, is like the study of phenomena like UFOs and time travel and things like that. And in a way, we do study time, but phenomenology really is a study of consciousness, perception, and states of being. So, to break it down a little further, we're going to look into my favorite parts of consciousness, both implicit, explicit, the natural attitude, and what philosophers like to call the phenomenological attitude. Okay, so consciousness, you think you know what it means, right? You're not in a coma, you're awake, you're breathing, you're aware of what's around you. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. The idea of consciousness kind of started way back with ancient Greek philosophers, but it grew and kind of became what we accept today through some work in the 1800s. One of my favorite philosophers to study is Edmund Husserl. It's Husserl. Husserl proposed this idea of the natural versus the phenomenological attitude. Try saying that 5 times fast. I'll try for you guys today. But anyways, the natural attitude is not like, oh, hey, she's natural, she's wearing no makeup, and she's, moving through the world in an authentic way. Well, it kind of is the authenticity part, but what it really means is that when we're in a state of the natural attitude, we're moving through the world without questioning kind of the deeper meanings of things. So let's use something simple like your walk from your dorm room to your classroom. Okay, you're walking through, your environment, you got your backpack on, and you say hi to some friends along the way. It's not at all saying that you're not aware of the things around you. Maybe you're noticing the leaves on the trees and, you're getting to the lecture hall and you notice that there's a puddle, so you walk around it, and then you open the door and you walk up the steps and you find yourself in your seat in your classroom. So that would be experiencing that walk to class in the natural attitude. The difference between the natural attitude and the phenomenological attitude is the fact that when you're existing in a state of being that uses the phenomenological attitude, one, you cannot be in the natural attitude state because the two are mutually exclusive. And two, you are not only experiencing, absorbing, and aware of the things that you experienced in the natural attitude, but you're questioning their meaning, their being, their kind of existence in the world. And that's where it kind of delves off into a tangent of existential philosophy. So now let's experience that walk to class in the phenomenological attitude. What that really means is now you're going to step foot out of your dorm room and you're going to feel the pavement under your feet. You're going to question how it was made and what it feels like to be walking on streets that are hard instead of packed dirt like the, I don't even know who the pilgrims walked on, I don't know. But then you see not only the leaves on the trees, but how did they get there? What did they mean? How do we relate to those leaves as we breathe in the oxygen that they have created through photosynthesis? And what if there weren't leaves on trees? You know, like you're really, well, we're going like way deep into this walk into school, you know? But that is what existing in the phenomenological attitude looks like. It really is an introspection and interpretation. It is kind of just a delving into the objects that we would normally take for granted in the natural world. The natural world being the world where we are just kind of moving through it. One of the things Husserl wanted to point out was the fact that this natural attitude includes what he calls a profound naivete. So this naivete is the fact that we're basically living in a world that we are not fully experiencing and not fully aware of and not fully taking advantage of. An individual object, Husserl wrote, is not merely an individual object as such, a this here, an object never repeatable, as qualified in itself thus and so. It has its own specific character, its stock of essential predictables, which must belong to it. After all, that is how we identify objects. If other, secondary, relative determinations can belong to it. So therefore, those secondary determinations and those secondary characteristics and analysis are things that we place on the object. The existential understanding of that leaf is not at all necessary to our being able to identify it as a leaf. Heck, it's a leaf if it's green and it looks like this. It could be a real leaf. Well, not like that. That'd be a really wonky leaf. You know what I'm saying? If we can identify it as a leaf, there are certain hallmarks of leaves, and those can be identified in the natural attitude. That being said, there is also this other realm that belongs to that object, which is called the phenomenological realm. So now you understand kind of the what I would describe as the academic understandings of the natural versus the phenomenological attitude. What I really like to break it down to is that the natural attitude is our default mode of functioning. It's the mode that we exist in the world kind of on autopilot. It's our autopilot way of walking, driving, talking, and connecting. The phenomenological attitude, on the other hand, is the focus we have on the natural attitude when we reflect upon it. So basically think of it as our default mode of functioning versus our reflecting on the way we've functioned and the things we interact with. Just to break down the phenomenological attitude a little further, every single person experiences life in a unique way. Each of us has our own, what I would call object relations, meaning that an individual object has totally different relations, things linked to it, memories tied to it, experiences associated with it, than, for example, even our sister, our siblings, or someone really close to us, our husband, will have completely different associations with objects. It's called our object relations or halo of relations than other people do. And therefore, our movement through the world will never be able to be replicated or experienced in the same way as someone else. This kind of is explained through that phenomenological and introspective, transcendental perspective. Okay, so for this next part, as we move a little bit further into kind of into phenomenology, I'm going to need you to remember 4 vocab words with me. These vocab words are implicit, explicit, substantive, and transitive. Okay, so these 4 words relate to consciousness, and we're going to go back to our little natural attitude and phenomenological attitude conversation. So, with another example. I love this example. It's really easy for a lot of people to understand. So let's say you had a really rough day at work and you're heading home, you get in your car, you turn the key, or maybe you have one of those cool spaceship cars, and you press the start button. Either way, you start your car and you exit the parking lot and begin your drive home. We're driving. All of a sudden, you're pulling off the exit ramp to your house, your apartment, whatever, and you're almost home. Well, you weren't unconscious for that entire period of time. And this is where kind of psychology and neuroscience go apart. Psychology thinks there's consciousness and unconsciousness. Neuroscience thinks that there's implicit and explicit consciousness. The whole time you were driving, you obviously didn't have any car crashes that you know of. You didn't have any crazy things happen to you that you're unaware of. You didn't, fly through every single red light or yellow light or red light. You clearly made it to that exit ramp in one piece. That being said, you were driving in not only the natural attitude, but in a state of implicit consciousness. Explicit consciousness is pretty easy to understand because it's the things that you are consciously and actively aware of and able to grasp in your head. So for example, I know right now in my explicit consciousness, I am holding my shirt and it is black. Something that the things we weren't aware of, the things we can't explain, the things we never fully grasped in our consciousness are part of that implicit consciousness. So think what you used to call unconscious is now, or subconscious thought is really implicit thought. You were having those thoughts because obviously they shaped your actions, your motivations, and your thought processes. They maybe got you from point A to point B. You just weren't able to grasp them and they weren't tangible. That doesn't mean your brain didn't do things. Just remember that car example. You left your parking lot and you didn't magically teleport or transport to the exit ramp heading to your house. Things happened in there, decisions happened. They were just part of that implicit stream of consciousness. Mike's outside the window right now touching his nipples. Anyways, things happened and decisions were made and thought processes occurred, but they were just part of that implicit stream of consciousness. One of my other favorite philosophers, William James, really coined the idea of the stream of consciousness, and the stream can be explained in a couple ways, but another thing that he explained to us is the idea that consciousness is like the life and movement of a bird. It's an alternation between flights and perchings. These flights are kind of what we like to think of as those implicit moments, the thoughts that we're not thinking about, and also another one of our vocab words, the transitive moments of consciousness. Those perchings are really kind of the explicit moments of consciousness, or those substantive moments. There's our fourth and final vocab word relating to consciousness. So the substantive moments are the moments that we can really grasp, that we're aware of. So for example, like if we are trying to meditate or be calm or whatever it is, and we're trying to really think of every thought that's passing through our head, the thoughts that we're really able to grasp are those substantive thoughts, the things that we are aware of. Now, something happened in between those thoughts. We didn't just go from thinking about the fact that I'm really hungry right now and what I want to have for dinner to the fact that the grass outside my window is really green. There wasn't just an immediate food grass. I would really be a dog, just distracted by anything if that was my thought process. There are actually a ton of thoughts that occur in between those two things, and we know this from imaging studies with fMRIs. However, we aren't able to fully grasp that transitive stream. If we're able to grasp the kind of path from point A to point B, those thoughts are no longer transitive and they become substantive. The moment you take a thought that's kind of in that, okay, so we have planet A and planet B, and the flight path from planet A to planet B is that transitive period. The moment we grasp onto that flight, it no longer is transitive, and instead it becomes substantive because it's something that we are substantially thinking about in that moment. Anyways, if you guys have questions about philosophy, phenomenology, or anything neuroscience-y, please drop it in the comments below, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up to show me a little love on here. I'd love to talk about more things relating to the brain, and this is really just my very, very brief summary of what consciousness and phenomenology are. There's much more to come, but remember, your key points were the natural attitude, phenomenological attitude, substantive and transitive thoughts, and explicit versus implicit consciousness. Next time someone says, oh, well, it just happened in my subconscious, correct them and tell them it was the implicit.